Good morning. Welcome again on a Saturday to an event sponsored by the Citizens Action Committee. This morning we're going to be talking about the elementary school space issue, and we have a panel of experts who will be able to answer a lot of the questions that we have on the plans put before the town for the elementary school space building need, both questions 2 and 3. This event is an opportunity for the public to get information. That's the key here. We're looking for a way to get the 2 plans out in front of everyone and have questions that have come about during this long process answered by those who actually will have some kind of true jurisdiction over whether or not or what plan is decided upon. And of course, always remembering that on May 8th, the town speaks and votes on which plan it decides it'd like to see. Most of the groups represented here actually have direct jurisdiction over the final say in what plan and how that plan is implemented, so please keep that in mind, and when we're asking them questions, some of those questions will be directed specifically at those folks. This event is going to be televised, obviously live today, but it'll be rebroadcast.
Wednesdays and every other Thursday mornings.
Okay. So Wednesdays?
Evenings at 8 o'clock.
Okay. Excellent, at 8 o'clock. A couple of things I want to get out of the way before we get started with these folks, the experts, and we actually will have a presentation that was given at town meeting by John DeSimone from the School Building Committee. The C.A.C. as a group is a group of citizens committed to informing the public and keeping the public involved in community issues, community solutions. And as part of that, we encourage everyone to stay involved both in the individual committees that deal with day-to-day town functions, and some of those folks that are sitting here deal with that. They'd love to have you come and bring your issues before them. In addition, getting involved in questions and issues that the town needs to be dealing with, not just schools, not just the individual roads, but we have other things, retirement, and so if you have issues, you should bring those up. Our group is about that, and so you can come to our meetings, or you can visit us at www.cacnr.org. In addition, coming up on the candidates issue, we had an event last week that was the candidates Q&A, where the public had a chance to ask questions of the candidates for Board of Selectmen and for School Committee. On April 24th, Tuesday, in the large group room at the middle school, the League of Women Voters will be having a Meet the Candidates night where you can meet all the candidates, including those candidates who are actually in uncontested races. One last plug that I'd like to put forward. We had the food here for the morning has been donated by Sunrise Bagels, and we'd like to appreciate their donating that money. All right, now I'm going to open it up to the panel, and I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves and kind of give us a little bit of background about what their committee does and how they actually have jurisdiction over this area. I'm going to start with Mr. Sturdivant.
Okay, Mark Sturdivant, I'm the Vice Chairman of the Finance Committee. We're the Financial Advisory Board to town meeting. We're charged with giving our opinions and recommendations on or against any projects or issues that come up with financial implications.
State Representative Brad Jones, also a member of the Finance Committee, but I'm here today to talk about Circuit Breaker, which is a property tax relief for senior citizens, as well as any general questions about school building assistance.
I'm Howard Solomon, Chair of the Historic District Commission, one of 2 historical bodies that are part of town government. We are chartered with handling all issues relating to the buildings within the Center Village Historic District, of which the current bachelor school is one.
Chris Hayden, I'm the Chairman of the Community Planning Commission. We try to plan how the town is going to grow, what the infrastructure is, the streets, and things of that nature. This includes how the schools are, where they are, and so that we have the proper infrastructure for the children and the rest of the town.
Jerry Venezia, School Committee. It's our responsibility to implement the ed specs of the projects, either one of the projects. It would also be our responsibility to determine which project goes forward, particularly if both of them were to pass on the ballot.
Steve Jervy, also from the school committee, and I think Jerry summarized our responsibility fairly well.
John DeSimone from the School Building Committee. The School Building Committee is charged with evaluating options for school space that includes designing the specific facilities, estimating the costs, and ultimately working with architects and the contractors to build the schools.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think now we're going to go directly into Jonathan's presentation on evaluating, or the school building committee's evaluation of the two plans.
Thank you, Todd. What I'll do is spend a few minutes just talking about some context that occurred over the last year or so, and more recently in the last few months, and then skip to some more specifics around the renovation of the bat shelter and the new school at Swan Pond. So, bear with us as we just move on to the slides. Over the last several months, a couple of things have happened that, just to orient for those folks who have not been as close to this. In November, as you may recall, there was an override vote on the FUMP plan to fund a number of projects in the town. While the needs of the schools continue to be pressing, and so therefore a number of folks towards the last half of 2000 were looking at additional options. In December, the Finance Committee funded a bat shelter feasibility study. It spent $20,000, or appropriated $20,000 to look at renovating that facility. The school committee then affirmed the educational specifications, as Mr. Venezia referred to, for the bat shelter renovation, exactly what spaces we needed to have in our plans. The school building committee was enlarged from 7 members to 10 members to aid us in this task. For the 3 months after that, we worked with the town's architects, Todd Lee Clark and Associates, Roses and Associates, to evaluate the feasibility of renovating the bat shelter. And we'll talk more in the presentation. The work on the bat shelter is a feasibility study and is slightly different than the work that we'll talk about that's been done with Swan Pond School. Town meeting did vote in February and approved the Swan Pond plan. Did not approve the bat shelter renovation. The selectmen did put both of those measures on the ballot, so on May 8th, both of those will be on the ballot and the town will vote. So that's just some quick context as to where we stand in the process. Why are we here? We're here because there are a couple of pressing needs. The first is that the bat shelter has classrooms that are dramatically smaller than the Hood and the Little School. The school is not up to date from an infrastructure standpoint. And second, enrollment has risen dramatically. So the fact that those spaces are small is impacting the town's educational process even more so than it did 10 years ago. As we thought about criteria, and this is the broader FUMP group and other bodies in town that thought about the solutions, there were a couple criteria. It had to meet educational specifications. These are set by the state and really just say you need to have this many classrooms, this many special spaces, and this size for each of those spaces. The second is it has to be accomplished in 2 to 3 years, given the pressing needs of the elementary school enrollment. And finally, there needed to be viable temporary housing options for the students. If all those things were true, then it was an option that people considered. So let me just wrap up, because there's been a lot of talk about different options in different ways, because everyone is very interested in solving the problem. Let me just talk briefly about the options. I'll go into more detail on Swan Pond and renovating or adding to the batch. Renovating the Murphy is something that people have talked about. Unfortunately, this building that we're in right now, it only would accommodate 12 classrooms based on the state educational specifications, would require a significant addition to all the facilities to accommodate it, and would just not be a cost-efficient plan. You could build a new high school or middle school, and people have talked about that, given the 30 acres parcel that's at Swan Pond, that would be better just to build a school there. Unfortunately, a high school or middle school costs several $1,000,000 more, in the tune of $40 or $50 million of construction costs just to build that facility, versus construction costs, we'll talk about it, $10 to $15 million to renovate the elementary school. And the site actually does not accommodate that sort of program. The 30 acres are deceptive in that some of it is wetlands and some of it is ledge. So you couldn't actually build the big enough school that you need there that a high school would require. And the last thing people talked about was adding to the hood of the little school. Unfortunately, those schools are relatively hemmed in. There's not a lot of room outside of the footprint to build. Their core facilities, like the library and the cafeteria, are too small. They would also have to be enlarged. So there are a series of problems, and ultimately we need the square footage. Whether you put the square footage at the hood and literally you put the square footage at the Swan Pond, and so the costs are not going to be any less if you renovate those facilities. So that left us evaluating Swan Pond and renovating and adding to the batch, which is the school building committee's specific charge. So let me talk first about the Batchelder and then about the hood. Quick overview on the Batchelder. What we're talking about the Batchelder is a renovation and addition. So this is important to remember. It's substantial reconstruction inside the existing, the old building of the Batch, the original structure, which is roughly 20,000 square feet. The annex would then be torn down and replaced with new space, and then an additional 26,000 square feet would be added to the site. And I'll show you some preliminary plans that just would outline how that could happen. And again, all the material we'll go through on the Batchelder is conceptual design. It is not schematic design. The actual building, if something were to happen at the Batchelder, would look a little bit different